splashed her face and arms, washed off her father's blood and the blood of the Indian that he'd killed in his last moments. Only Enrique, an arrow in his chest, had still been alive when she'd recovered enough to drag herself painfully to see what had happened to the others. She had seen with a shuddering sob that her father was dead. She crossed herself and crept to Enrique. Blood frothed from his mouth and he groaned. The arrow jerked up and down with his gasping breaths. Socorro, gritting her teeth, took hold of the cane arrow and started to tug.
"Leave it," he cried, flinching. "I'm dying, my lady. Listen, take water and food. Go north. There's a ranch beyond the highest mountain, Pinacate. If you'll stay here, those Indios, they will be back."
His voice choked off in pinkish foam. She found a wineskin and tipped it to his lips. He swallowed.
"It will just leak out of me,"
he grinned, sweat standing on his leathery face.
"Go! You can't help me."
But she stayed with him until he died, holding him in her arms and bathing his face. Outside the wagon, her father was skewered on a lance. He had an arrow in his shoulder and another in his thigh. His eyes stared at the sun. Beyond him sprawled the soldiers, naked and mutilated, brought down in the first seconds of the ambush, muskets unfired. Socorro had retched when she found Consuelo. They had grown up together, and the girl was more friend than servant. Her mother, the housekeeper for widowed Don Esteban Quintana, assuming even more control after the recent death of Socorro's aunt, Doña Catalina. Socorro covered the ruined body, and then she pressed her foot against her father to tear out the lance. She dragged him to an arroyo. At the brink she kissed him, closed his eyes, whispered a prayer, and asked him to forgive her that she couldn't dig a grave in the rocky soil. Next she dragged Enrique over, and then Consuelo, and shoved rocks down till the bodies were covered and no hand or knee protruded. Sickening to send boulders down on top of those she loved, but better that than letting them be torn by birds and beasts. She was exhausted now. The poor men of the escort would simply have to lie as they were, but she knelt by them and prayed for their souls, crossed each of them, and promised to burn candles for them if she lived to reach a shrine. The chests had been ransacked. They held her wedding finery and heirlooms, including a dozen silver goblets given to a Quintana by the King of Spain, intended for the home she was to have established with her second cousin, who waited for her in Los Angeles. Such things couldn't help her now. She was grateful for the few things the Areños had left. In a blue cotton rebozo, she tied as much dried corn and meat as she thought she could carry without losing speed, fastened a knife around her waist, and the precious water jug. Kneeling once more by the burial arroyo, she turned her face north, toward the distant purple mountain. How far? And the ranch beyond? When? Dread had frozen the girl. For a moment she hesitated. Perhaps she should follow the wagon ruts and hope to meet some merchant from Caborca or the south. She hated to lose the track of human beings, the sign of where they had at least been and might come again. It was also where the Areños, or Sandpapegos, waited for travelers. And the travelers, Socorro shivered. Luck to meet a merchant in this region below the Gran Desierto. Bandits, more likely. Or scalp hunters, many of them gringos who didn't often care whether they collected bounty for Mexican or Papego scalps instead of Apache. Even Socorro's sheltered upbringing hadn't shielded her from the grim realities of life in Sonora in 1847. The government had long been powerless against the Apaches, and the war with the United States had left the frontier even more exposed. Battling